This week, we have a very special chat with Mary DeMarle, Executive Narrative Director on Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. And finally, we make it into the Wyoming wilderness for a look at Firewatch. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week, still more publishers have pulled out of E3. EA surprised us all back in January when it announced that it would be hosting its own event next door to the E3 festivities in June, and it looks like the publisher has started a trend. Now, Activision has confirmed that it won't be presenting a booth in 2016, and neither will Disney, and neither will the juggernaut that is Wargaming. Activision's absence is surprising, but the publisher isn't gone completely. The upcoming Call of Duty title will be shown off at the PlayStation booth, just a few years after the franchise was heralded as an Xbox flagship title. Other than that, we're not expected to hear much from Destiny, Skylanders or Guitar Hero, more's the pity. Disney is a more understandable absence. This week we learned that Disney Infinity 4 won't be arriving until at least next year, with developer Avalanche instead focusing on supporting Infinity 3, bringing several new playsets and characters to the game. Wargaming also is not a huge shock, with a spokesperson explaining that E3 just doesn't fit the company's current direction. Given that the direction largely revolves around free-to-play digital games, it makes sense that a retail-centric event like E3 is one they can afford to skip. With just 3 months to go before the biggest show in the gaming calendar, who knows if anyone else will drop out? And the bigger question, who knows if they'll be back for 2017? But speaking of wargaming, their historical department isn't messing around. The Australian cruiser tank, better known as a Sentinel, was the only tank designed and mass-produced in Australia during World War II, and there are just 7 remaining in the world. Now, one of those 7 has been returned to the Australian Armour and Artillery Museum in Cairns in far north Queensland, thanks to the efforts of Wargaming's Special Projects team. And what does this have to do with video games? Well, while getting up close and personal with the real-world tank, the team at Wargaming were also paying plenty of attention to detail, and the AC-1 Sentinel will soon be a playable vehicle in World of Tanks as part of the British tech tree. In other news, Uncharted 4 has been delayed again, with Sony blaming the 2-week wait on manufacturing issues rather than the now traditional extra development time. The game was first due out in 2015, then early 2016, and then March 16, and then April 29, and now May 10. And when the game is finally in our hands, it'll be something very different to what it was first envisaged. Naughty Dog has said the storyline was changed 100% when former writers Amy Hennig and Justin Richmond left the studio. The new writing team, Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, fresh from the success of The Last of Us, apparently brought something very new to the game, explaining that they want to do the franchise justice and making it a mind-blowing, eye-popping, sweaty palms adventure. And speaking of games we've been waiting a while for, EA has confirmed that BioWare's new one, Mass Effect Andromeda, won't be out until this time next year, despite us all hoping for a 2016 release. The news came from company CFO Blake Jorgensen, who also announced Battlefield 5 will be here by the end of the year, with the new Titanfall due out around the same time. And while we still don't know anything really about Andromeda, we do know that the main character's name is Pathfinder, and he looks a little something like this. The artwork was published to a 3D modelling forum in October last year, and this is the same character we saw in the E3 trailer in 2015. We do know that he is a new character to the universe, but we don't know if, in fine Mass Effect tradition, he will have a female counterpart. In quick news, No Man's Sky has finally set a formal release date, and you'll be waiting until June to start exploring the galaxy. It's worth noting that this one comes with a full retail price tag, whether you buy it digitally or from a store, disappointing more than a few potential fans who are hoping to pick it up at an indie discount. We'd been teased by a new trademark for Alan Wake's return alongside some secret Easter eggs tucked away into a recent trailer for Quantum Break, but developer Remedy has let us all down gently. It's not a new game. Instead, Alan Wake's return will be a TV show within the live-action Quantum Break series. It's still interesting, but it's not quite what we'd expected. In Nintendo news, there was a direct presentation that brought heaps of information for fans of both the Wii U and the 3DS, but the title that particularly grabbed our attention is Pocket Card Jockey, a new fast-paced solitaire game from Pokemon developer Game Freak. Play cards and propel a horse along a track. It'll be out in May via the eShop. And 2 bits of movie news now. Firstly, the Thief film adaptation is still happening despite a serious amount of radio silence. Even if you're excited for this one after the disappointing latest game in the series, don't get your hopes up too far. The storyline promises to be a simple one. A master thief tries to restore freedom which has been denied by a magic-wielding tyrant. So, there's that. Potentially more interesting is the upcoming Assassin's Creed film due out in December. Production company New Regency has reportedly been encouraged by fan responses to the few images that have been released from the project and has announced plans for a sequel before the initial movie is even being finished. Someone's got some big hopes for the upcoming film, which launches in the middle of a big 12 months for video game movies. Cinemagoers will also be treated to Ratchet & Clank, the Angry Birds movie and Warcraft, if they're that way inclined. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, got plenty more still to come. How did we get here? What's happened in the 2 years between Human Revolution and Mankind Divided?
Okay, well, in Human Revolution, Adam went on a journey. He was forced to become mechanically augmented against his will, and his choice was thus stolen from him. And he went on a journey to understand why and to gain his choices back. And at the end, after uncovering this huge conspiracy and mystery, he was put into a situation where a lot of the millions of augmented people all over the world were forced into these psychotic rages and started killing everyone. And he had to basically stop that from happening or mitigate it, and then try and change the perception of people in a way that he felt society should go. And 2 years later, what he's realized is that although he tried and he did get a message out to the world, humans are a little more complex than that. When you're faced with such a terrible, tragic incident, you don't have time to listen to messages. You only live the experience. And when you have time to finally get back, suddenly there's so much counter-information, there's disinformation, there are rumors, and as people, we tend to find and grasp onto the thing we believe to be true, whether it's true or not. So he basically starts this game 2 years later, seeing the world has become much more chaotic as a result of that event. There's a huge growth of anger and paranoia and racism against the augmented. Society has gone from being questioning this to dividing against it. And he knows who's really behind it, and he needs to stop them. So he's now become someone who has become much more focused. He's no longer someone who didn't ask for it. He's now someone who is embracing what he has become. He's much more seasoned. He is much more in control of his own abilities, his own sense, and he's got a sense of purpose. And that is that I still have to make this right, and the way to make it right is to really expose the people behind it.
They've worked from the shadows for years, shaping the future, manipulating lives, controlling information. Innocents have died as they play their game.
We will not sit idly by and allow our rights to be eroded out of fear and ignorance any longer. We will not be herded into ghettos and treated as outcasts. We will stop at nothing.
The world is different now. The old rules no longer apply.
The whole game isn't necessarily about Adam Jensen, isn't the game's kind of more about us and about the real world, is that right?
Yes. One of the things that is really important for us when we're creating a Deus Ex game is we want to hold up a window to the world. We want to show you it's a near future fiction, so it is showing you where we're heading and throwing up that mirror so that we can look at it and see what's happening in our world and kind of decide for ourselves how we feel about it. So it isn't just about Adam, as you said. It's really about what does it mean mean to be human. When faced with a great deal of paranoia and racism against other people, how do we handle that? Do we become very emotional? Do we become very reasonable? Do we hide ourselves in these things? And are we looking at things in the world that are happening today, that people's response to terrible tragedies, people's response to anger and hatred, to refugees, to police going more and more against the people, those are the kind of things we look at.
So is our world destined to end up like Adam's world? Is that what you're saying?
I hope not. I really hope not. But it is all a choice, where we go. Certainly in terms of when we worked on Human Revolution, we did a lot of research into biotechnology and where are we going with this. And a lot of what we saw is true, and we always try and ground our fiction in today's world. And people are they're getting these amazing technological advances that are enabling them to overcome these disabilities or things that are happening, and it is changing, and mankind is changing because of that. How are we going to deal with that as we start seeing more and more of it in our world? I don't know. Hopefully not the way that it's being handled in Human Revolution and Deus Ex, Mankind Divided.
This should be your fight as well, brother. The promise of a golden age is over.
This is all actually set before the original Deus Ex. So is this then inevitably going to lead up to what we saw with J.C. Denton?
We definitely know where we're going. 2052, if you've played the original games, we all know what's happening in 2052. Our game is taking place 25, 27, 22 years before 2052. My math's not really good today. But so we know where we're going. But what's interesting, and one of the things that I find very interesting, is that history is always being written by the winners. So although we know what happens in 2052, we know what the winners tell us happened in the years before that. Now we are dealing with their past, but it is our present. And as we move forward, we can discover that although on broad strokes things happen the way we think they are, did it really happen that way? Or was there some subtlety, some difference that occurred? Those are the kind of things that as a storyteller I love playing with.
And you've stepped into such an amazing universe where there is the world that Warren Spector created 15 years ago when Deus Ex came out. And so yours is ever so slightly different, but you've already got that rich background to play with. What's that been like?
It's been super exciting, super scary, pretty daunting at times, and a lot of fun. When the original Deus Ex came out, I was just starting in the game industry, and I remember everyone in my office was playing the game, and everybody was talking about it and losing sleep and playing it. And 10 years later, when I suddenly got this chance to revive it and bring it back, my first reaction was, oh, this is so amazing, this is going to be great. And my second reaction was, oh my God, I'm scared to death. Because people love this, and I don't want to change it. But working with the team that I worked with, we all realized we love it too. And as long as you love it and you understand it, you can bring that to it and bring the passion. And yesterday, I got a chance to sit on a panel with Warren Spector, and hearing him talk about their creative process, and realizing that we think the same things, we believe the same things, we're looking at the same things. So it really has been a very exciting journey.
So much pain. So many lies. Their darkness must end.
It's my job to come up with the story for the game and to work with a team of writers to make the story, develop and make it go forward. But also it means, because when you're working in the games industry, the story is told by every single person who is creating that game. We've got level designers, we've got production artists, we've got programmers, we've got animators, the sound people. All of them are building that story. And since the story is told through the player experience, every single aspect of the game is reflecting that story. So a lot of my job is spent, once we've spec'd out the main storyline, it's to work with the rest of the team to present the ideas of the story to the level designers and the gameplay people, and then work with them to actually make that story get told through gameplay. And it really means a lot ensuring that, I present it to them, they come back with, okay, we understand what we need to do here. Here's what we think will do it. And then it's a lot of reviewing of those things and saying, oh, that idea works so perfectly. It wasn't at all what I envisioned, which is great, because it's so much more creative. Or it's not quite there, but maybe if we tweaked it in this direction, it would work. And so a lot of my time is spent working with the artists, filling them in on things, then letting their own creativity come in to play. And for example, to give an example, in Human Revolution, everybody talks about Adam Jensen's apartment, because when you walk in there, that is like, I think our art director describes it as the Adam Museum. You walk in there and you learn so much about Jensen just by looking at the environment. Well, the way that happened is I sat down with the concept artist and the level artist and designer for that room, and I told them, here's who Adam Jensen is. How are you going to express that? And they're the ones who said, oh, well, if he's been sick for a while, there should be dead plants, there should be this, there should be all this. And they came up with that, not me. It's just, so it's a back and forth working with the rest of the team to ensure that everybody's story meshes and tells the same one.
And then you hand it over to the players, and their story is then completely different to the one that you've given them.
That's very true. That's very true, because one of the things too, we talk about Adam going on a journey in this game. Well, it isn't Adam's journey, it's your journey. So when people ask, oh, is this a story of redemption for Jensen? Is it what? I said, I don't know, because it's really whatever story the player decides it's going to be.
I used to know what tomorrow looked like. Before the world split in two. Everything changed then. Including me.
Agent Jensen, am I going to have a problem with you?
No, sir. No reason to assume you would.
This shale slide is steep. How do you expect me to get down this?
I don't remember it being that bad. It's not even named on our topos.
It should be called Cripple Gulch, just east of Gonna Pee in a Bag Forever Flats.
Oh, is that Absaroka Indian? Maybe Creek?
That's actually English for not in my job description. No! Oh!
Like with so many games, part of the beauty of Firewatch comes when you don't know what to expect. It's the unfolding and the experience that makes the game so great, and let's face it, something like Firewatch arguably is more experience than game. So often the idea of spoilers is thrown around relating to the end of the game or some major plot twist contained within, but for something like Firewatch, I found one of the most impactful moments happened right at the beginning, perhaps before the game itself had even started. If someone had told me outright, oh, so that's why Henry's gone to the forest, my relationship with the character would have been much less rich, much less invested, and much less enjoyable. So, what can I tell you about Firewatch? It's 1989. You play the game through the eyes of Henry, a 40-something guy who's looking to spend a summer as far away from his real life as possible. He's packed a few belongings into a bag and headed off to an observation tower in the middle of a Wyoming national park. And that's where the fun begins.
that storm knocked out the phone line I used to talk to the service, which means we're cut off.
I'll see what I can do.
You think you'll take to it? Being out here? The isolation gets to people.
Firewatch is a very lonely game. It's a very personal game. You, and Henry, can spend literally hours wandering around the forest without seeing another person. Everything Henry sees, you see. That includes his pudgy fingers fumbling with a map or a compass, his feet stumbling on a path, and the change in perspective as he scrambles up a rock wall. Henry is not one of those typical video game heroes, which again lends itself beautifully to the ridiculously personal nature of the game. And there's another person who adds to that personal nature. Delilah, the woman who's doing the same job as you in the next tower over. You interact with her through a two-way radio, so even though she's not physically there with you, you're not really alone. She is more than just a quest giver, although she is the one who tells you what to do. She's a fully fleshed out character, if a disembodied voice can be fleshed out. When I stumbled upon a particularly beautiful view, my hand was on the radio to talk to Delilah about it. She answered my questions, reassured my fears, and told me some terrible, terrible jokes.
What's in this cave down here?
NFS tells people not to go too far in there. It's pretty dangerous. You're in it, aren't you?
It doesn't seem that dangerous. Whoa, whoa! Ah, no!
Henry!
Seriously, it's completely fine in here.
Damn it.
I loved the radio mechanic. Playing on PC, I had to push left shift every time I wanted to talk to Delilah, holding the key to select a dialogue option, and then letting go in order to send it, just like a real two-way radio. It was intuitive and clever, and the hold and release element just added to the experience.
I found a little trowel. Maybe I should take it with me. Could use it to pop open beers.
Wow, 99% sure that's for burying poop.
And I'm holding it.
Maybe drop it?
A few years ago, when I was in California, I saw a sign for a summer camp advertising all the fun things you could do at this particular location. There were the usual warm weather things, swimming and hiking and making things, but there was one attraction I could not comprehend. Campfires, it said. Campfires and fireworks. Having grown up in, as we were all constantly reminded, the driest state in the driest continent on Earth, the idea of voluntarily lighting fires and fireworks in summer seemed unnecessarily risky and more than a little foolish. So when I opened Firewatch, all beautiful forests and spindly observation towers, it felt relaxing and reassuring that there was someone else who understood that, at certain times of the year at least, that was something you did not do. When one of the first things I was asked to do in-game was go find people setting off fireworks, berating them for lighting sparks in the tinder-dry wilderness, it felt almost like home. The actual story, the landscape, the soundtrack, the voice acting, the camera that gives you real-world prints, it all just added layers to something that was an all-too-brief moment of pure escapism. I can understand why some people might not like it, but for me, at least, Firewatch was wonderful.
2 young women have been reported missing. You're probably the last person to have seen them.
Hey, you fucking kids! Somebody cut the comms.
What?
I'm out here and the wire is cut clean through.
Wait, you're already there? You're not in your tower?
No, I'm not.
Then who is?
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. Again, with procedurally generated survival sim The Flame in the Flood, while we dip our toes into the murky MMO waters of brand new one, Black Desert Online. In the meantime, you can catch us at playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.